subscribe to Sales Scholar Studios and do not forget to click on the bell icon.
At job, I would pretend I don't have a baby. At home, I would have to pretend I don't have a job. It's very, very, the internal conflict was huge. Around that time, and under the spell of antidepressants and analgesics and, alertness boosters, because I would fall asleep at work. I really don't know what happened that particular day, but I can clearly almost see that in my eyes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leisurely Baatein. My guest today is Sinjini Sengupta. Sinjini is an author, columnist, keynote and TEDx speaker. She is also an actuary and architecting a lighthouse. Sinjini, welcome to Leisurely Baatein. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastically well. Thank you so much, Subhadip, and the work you are doing with your book and with your Leisurely Baatein and with everything else is plain fantastic. So we look forward to a lot of good work from you, and I'm really honored to be invited. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sinjini. I mean, how I wanted this to be over a cup of tea across the table, but I'm sure we will do another edition post the COVID.
Yes.
And shortly.
For sure.
Sinjini, to start with, I mean, you grew up in Kolkata, right? I mean, in the same city I grew up. So I'd like to start by, asking you to share a little bit about your early life and what drew you into writing. Is it that typical Bengali push from inside the home that you have to write so many things and one for each occasion, Durga Puja, Saraswati Puja and all that, or very keen to understand that.
Right. That's a very interesting question, and of course you don't get often asked that. Talking about push from home and writing, putting all those words together, the only push I can imagine I got into writing is when it would be Shubha Vijaya after the Durga Puja, and we would be pushed to write, messages seeking blessings and, offering our pranam to the elders who we would never see maybe for many years, but then you have to write that postcard, one line each, right, especially for the children in the house. And I lived in a joint household, like as they call it, joint family. So yes, if I was ever pushed and if I ever relented to any push, because I have always kind of been a rebel, I guess. So it was that one sentence was reserved for each of us kids, and we had to write, how are you doing? Please accept my pranam and give us your blessings. Other than that, I don't think I relented into much of push.
Right.
Where I got, an upbringing of a Bengali, I think, is a pretty stereotypical thing. My parents are atheists. I belong to a joint family, and my family was defined very differently than what I now think of as family, because when I was growing up, we had 4 houses, one after the other, in a blind lane. Ours was the first one, and it was only much later, when I was much older, that I realized that it is not one family. These are like 4 families with 4 surnames. Because growing up, I always imagined it's like, I could enter any house and fall asleep. I could enter any house and have my lunch, and nobody would even, it was normal. So any wedding would be like the groom sits in one house, the bride sits in another house. It was like truly an extended family. We didn't need permission from each other to be able to encroach. It was like our entire thing. If we were hungry, other than obviously lunch and dinner, we would climb up trees. So I lived in the suburb in Kolkata. So I had the very unique mix of access to the main city, but at the same time also a pretty quintessential and very, very, very soft. I think looking back, I feel very grateful about it. Also, the other thing that I feel very grateful about, of course, as a child, you are full of complaints, right? That everything is wrong, everybody else is more privileged than you and all. So especially being the older one, I still am very bitter and raw about sibling rivalry. So when my brother came and everything was taken away from me, and I was sent away to the other room to sleep with my grandma. So all those aside, now, and especially now that I work with topics such as gender advocacy and emotional wellness, I do often reflect back how utterly privileged I was. For one, I had a voice. And now when I speak so much, and when I actually, especially with storytelling and public speaking, when I read about not just Indian but also Western influences, where they say how women don't have voices because as children they were like kind of hushed down, and a lot of raising voice or laughing out loud and stuff like that. If I look back to when I was maybe 10 years old, I would be debating, like full-throated debating with very old people, my father and my uncles and everybody else, over politics, over mythology. I mean, I never felt, that ageism at least.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, least of all, I would say, obviously, many of us say that, and it's a huge mistake to say that we didn't see discrimination at our home, which is why we don't believe it exists. It is very untrue. But having said that, I'm the only daughter in the whole family, in the whole clan. So I have one, younger brother. My uncle's two children are sons. My elder, like my Jethus. So basically, I'm the only daughter in the clan. So somehow I got the discrimination was, the discrimination was actually reversed because I was the oldest and the girl.
Right.
So I think my childhoods were, obviously we are pretty selective in our memory, but there were a lot of, obviously, lack of belonging or longing or loneliness, those aside. Now if I look at, like, it was made of load shedding evenings and shadow plays with finger on the walls. Absolutely. And the light of the candle or the light of the hurricane and mosquitoes whizzing around. So there's so much that is almost a fairy tale scene if I think of now.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you were speaking, like, it transported me back in those days when, as the power went out, I used to feel so excited as a young boy because there was an excuse not to study.
Yeah.
And the next thing was like open up all the windows. Obviously, there was not. I mean, my house didn't have an inverter. That you could, like, these days that you don't even realize a failure of power. But I think those probably made me find stories in darkness, find stories within me, and probably encouraged me to create a world of fantasy within me. So I mean, you transported me into back in those days, which was phenomenal. I could still visualize, the small rented apartment in Kolkata in Gurgaon, where we lived, where I lived with my parents. So nostalgia.
Yeah.
Sinjini, your book Elixir, I mean, it's been phenomenally successful, and this also was made into an award-winning short film. Talk us through what motivated and inspired you to write the book, and the whole journey, from thought to seeing the book in hand, and then living the life of an author.
Right. Now that itself is a story, how Elixir came into being and how it all happened and all. So this was around a time when I was slowly realizing that all I grew up aspiring for wasn't so much worth it, and I was falling very ill because I mean, as it happens with all of us, I guess, how it manifests is different, but it happens in various degrees to all of us. I was slowly getting kind of disillusioned with what I grew up thinking should be my dream, to grow up and then to go for a job and get the next promotion, etc., etc. And more than how much I was getting disillusioned, my body was speaking up finally, because it's been a long I'm sure this is a very common story, and Elixir really starts from there. So Elixir's evolution would be incomplete if I don't mention that. So this was around the time when I was falling very unwell, face down unwell almost. The doctor gave me an ultimatum. I was a step away from quadriplegia, etc., etc. So I had to finally, the doctor told me that you have to take a little bit of rest at the least. I had done with, so many months of unpaid and physiotherapy and bed rest. So I had put in my paper. It was one of the days during my notice period. I was coming back from work to home, and around those times my daughter was very tiny, and she would go to the school in the morning. I would wake up and go to office, and I would come home at 11 in the night or 12 in the night, and she would be asleep. We would hardly see each other face to face, as it often happens with women at work, corporate. At job, I would pretend I don't have a baby. At home, I would have to pretend I don't have a job. It's very, very, the internal conflict was huge around that time, and under the spell of antidepressants and analgesics and alertness boosters, because I would fall asleep at work. I really don't know what happened that particular day, but I can clearly almost see that in my eyes, even with my open eyes. So that night I was waiting in the office cab, waiting to be dropped home, and the typical 15 minutes journey took me 1.5 hours because of the roster and this road safety. So whatever, company office drop. On any other day, I would just let it pass. When this idea occurred to me, I don't know what it was that day that I, pulled out the BlackBerry from my laptop bag, and I started to punch in a few ideas that came to me. And before I knew, an hour had passed or 2 hours had passed. I had been dropped home, and I had a story in my office BlackBerry, punched out story.
Wonderful.
So my blog was very new. I just posted the story and kind of forgot about it. Now Anirban, my husband, he has been always into theatres. He's a banker by profession. We are classmates from ISI. He has been into theatres ever since he was in mid school. So it's getting difficult to make theatres with all friends moving around, relocating. So he read that story and he said, I want to make it into a film. That was kind of a little bit of a shock at that point, because I was just giving up my job, which would mean half the household earnings, etc. I don't know what got on to us. We crowdfunded a bit, 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees from this friend and that. We dissolved a couple of FDs. We got the film made, and the next the film got selected to be screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2016. So that was around the time when I had also, started staying home, taking a break from work, and that is how Elixir was born as a film.
Right.
And as a short film, and again as a short film, it kind of went through the roof when it got best film at Boston, and quite a few things happened, something that even I find it difficult to kind of believe. So I pinch myself even now that truly happened. So once we came back from the red carpet walk at Cannes in 2016, we got invited at a number of screenings for the film at various cities in India. So in Gurgaon, at one of the screenings, and then when we were standing there, taking questions from the audience, this gentleman just walked up to me and gave me his card and said that, I'm a publisher. I own a publishing house, and this belongs to a book, and you should write it into a book. So I signed the contract first before I wrote the first word of the manuscript. And that too is a dream, because I grew up on stories like J.K. Rowling getting rejected 12 times, right? So to be published, in this manner in itself was a very funny and a very magical story.
Right.
So that's how Elixir happened. And I'm very, if you say Elixir, the book has come out well, I would say that it was under the fear psychosis that everybody would say, oh my God, the film was so much better, that I really pushed myself hard that the book should now live up to the film, because it was a reverse journey. And I'm utterly grateful and touched. I really had zero connection in this world of writers or journalists or media. I am a very old school person who doesn't believe in spending for book marketing, being an author. So I belong to that kind of mindset. The way the book picked up and the way it was featured and reviewed, and I got interviewed by the Hindu, and all of those things happened, and the book got shortlisted at the Gurgaon Lit Fest in 2018 as one of the 5 best fictions. I was totally blown away. I was I don't know. I'm so scared that I'm yet to write my second one, because it really was, it would really truly was a dream come true, which also is the theme of my book, as you would know. It's about dreams.
No, I mean, I was fortunate to see the film as well as read the book, and it indeed is like wonderful. It's not a very easy subject to write, very sensitive, but you kind of portrayed it very well, and I've really enjoyed not only the short film but also reading the book. So well done to you and to Anirban. Wonderful. And did you retain that BlackBerry, or did you give it back to the office?
I gave it back to the office, of course, when I left. It should have been
job. Like a lucky charm for you. should have found a place on your bookshelf somewhere and as a showpiece. Mm-hmm. So well done on that.
Saying that.
Thank you, Sinjini. You've been a prolific speaker as well. You're a distinguished Toastmaster, and you've now started an entrepreneurial initiative. So talk us about how you're architecting your Lighthouse.
Thank you for asking me that. So Lighthouse is again another dream project for me. It was long due. It is finally happening now. What I'm trying to do is to bring my work together, because I have been doing this very passionately and for almost like my job hours over the last many years. So now I'm trying to bring all those together under Lighthouse. So the model of Lighthouse is I would be working under three major zones: storytelling, change making, and thought leadership. Now, what I mean by that is storytelling, I have come to believe, sits at the heart of almost everything we do. And at times we are unaware of, stories happen to children even before they learn language. Stories happen
as Bengalis, the whole concept of adda and roake boshe adda. I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist talking and speaking in Bengali. When you talk about storytelling and adda, they are Bengali would come out with his mother tongue, a few words at least. And you would see a lot of friendship grew up, around stories, and some of them were so fabricated. And I think, I at least owe a lot, to those steps of old houses of Kolkata, which is slowly vanishing into multi-stories.
Yeah, you don't have rock anymore. I mean, rock, that few 2-3 steps before you enter the main house is where it's public property. It's not, right. House owners. House owners don't have anything to do with that. Now you have built it. If you are arriving at the house, we can at best move and let you pass by, but it belongs to public now.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean that culture is obvious.
Sorry, I had to barge in.
No, most welcome.
It has to bring in that element of a little bit of adda when it comes to storytelling.
Absolutely.
I promise not to barge in anymore.
No, you're most welcome. That is what I'm sure your leisurely bate is about.
Right.
So Lighthouse is essentially about storytelling, change making, and thought leadership. And coming to storytelling again, just as you said, stories are almost every living, waking, even sleeping hours of our lives. Stories happen to human beings perhaps before language was invented. Stories happen to babies before they learn the ropes of language. Stories are now happening in boardrooms, replacing numbers and bar diagrams and pie charts. Stories happen in schools. Stories happen in teaching. Stories are essential parts of dining table conversations and sets up relationships and family dynamics. Everything is story. And if we are not aware of how we say that, if we are not aware of what stories we are telling the world, or what stories we are even telling ourselves about ourselves, I believe that it's almost like you are missing the bigger picture, because if we are already broadcasting something, we better be aware of what we are broadcasting. And oftentimes it is, in the corporate terms, it is told as branding stories or how you show yourself. But I feel that, we are essentially congruent, and, integrity is big. So how you feel, how you speak, they have to be aligned in a way. And stories form a big part of your authenticity, your vulnerability, your profession, your personal, your inner, your outer, covered everything. So storytelling is essentially my first tenet of Lighthouse. I am in fact rolling out my very first program in 20 hours intensive in storytelling, where I will be talking about everything under storytelling, everything I know. And I have been very privileged and lucky to take my stories and my speeches to, a number of times on TEDx and to a few important platforms where my voice got that amplification. So it's very important to win that fear of, storytelling or public speaking, so that you don't let that come in between your thoughts and the rest of the world. So it's essentially a lot of inner work more than it is professional branding.
Right.
So with storytelling, again, change making is only the second tenet of it, and change making is everything. I think now for some time we have been saying that the future belongs to entrepreneurs, but I feel that the future belongs to change makers, because now businesses are not businesses unless they are aware of their purpose and what good they're doing in the world. What's their bigger why, and that is change making. Change making is not only anymore to do with non-profits or NGOs. So change making is very important, and again, the COVID times are giving us a huge reckoning in that we need to change many things about how we work our every day. And thought leadership is nothing but storytelling, change making, taking the next leap, and bringing the new idea of a new world. We bring the different layers of the ecosystem into a holistic solution, because we cannot solve problems in vacuum. Oftentimes we are looking at social causes and we are like, we'll kill it in the next 10 minutes, we'll kill it in the one keynote. It doesn't happen like that. It is a lot of inner work, it is a lot of policy, culture, it's a lot of interdependence. So thought leadership, again, I feel is the culmination of storytelling and change making, and when things get done.
Right.
So I feel that the time is right, and if you don't, who would? So here I am.
Right. No, wonderful. I think that's a lot of people are looking into, and especially when you talk about stories and being a salesman, I always say that facts tell, but stories sell. So I'm certainly going to subscribe to or participate in one of your classes on storytelling to hopefully make my abilities as a storyteller, improve my abilities as a storyteller. Sinjini, you have been very vocal about workplace and mental health issues in Indian workplace. And so I'd like to understand from you, do you think Indian workplace gives enough importance to mental health issues, and or do you see during the COVID it's just like people are talking more about it and trying to scratch the surface, acknowledging it to some extent, but yes, the question is do you really believe that Indian workplaces give enough importance to mental health issues?
If Indian workplaces give enough importance to mental health issues, no. A big resounding no, obviously no. Talk of obvious evidences like, the leave policies, the sick leave policy. If you feel anxious one day or if you are feeling depressed, you call up your boss and you say, I've got a little temperature, or, I've twisted my ankle. And strangely enough, the same thing goes to any kind of female conditions, which is like having a period pain or not, going through infertility treatment. So there's this hush, there's this denial of our realities, denial of our bodies. Yes, no, obviously workplaces are not, have not grown up to the very existence and the acknowledgement of the fact that the brain is an essential part of the body, rather a very important part of the body, and can fall ill just the same.
Right.
The COVID times definitely have been a push in the direction of awareness, etc. I would say that while at the very, since there's nothing, you start wishing for the big blows first, which is obviously to get mental health explicitly included in your policy, to give a few sessions on mental health when we talk about, what are the realities, and we don't call them, we don't, I remember when I had major depressive disorder, a boss one over actually had told me, so you are going to a psychiatrist. So it's almost like so that is at one level, which is to talk about mental health. But I feel that it's much deeper than that. What is the culture with which we are working at workplaces? I think we operate from a place of fear psychosis. I mean, the hierarchy, and especially in India, as you mentioned, also in India, I mean, it's all I'm sure the grass looks greener. On the other side, everybody has their own share of cultural issues. However, in India, the human dignity question is very, very skewed, and depends on which kind of corporate it is. I have had the opportunity to work both in Indian concerns as well as MNCs. I've seen, from my little experience, I've seen the difference of the various kinds. Also depends on the kind of, goodwill or the kind of culture the companies put in place. But having said that, there is this, it works with fear more than love and passion. Let's get that clear. I mean, I don't think, there's no two words about it. And the very fact that it's hierarchy, it's like, if you don't get this done, or you have to be around, and presentism more than performance. And performance also, what is performance? Like, everybody cannot be everything. Instead of collaboration, we pit ourselves against each other with the reward recognition. So I feel that everything needs a very thorough look. Like, I have been doing a course from a foreign university, a brief few weeks course on self-determination theory, and I'm really thinking very hard about what is even the reward recognition mechanism, and does it help us to be better human beings, or does it tell us that you bring only a part of you at work, and elbow push each other and go back home and then live your life, and there's hardly any life left after you have been, whatever the work culture and stress level is. I feel that a lot needs to change. It's perhaps wrong to say it has to be top down and leadership alone. But again, yes, a lot of the onus is on the leadership because they have to lead the way, but they are also insecure in their own ways. So it's a mechanism that we have put in place. We have to re-engineer that mechanism.
Right.
But especially as young people, I think we are, I am very hopeful. I do see that the young people are much more disillusioned than we were. We were so scared. These people, when I work with younger people, especially because I am mentored and coach to a number of young women, they're so much more. Their sense of self is so much more developed. They have better, better clarity. They are more sorted. So I'm very hopeful that we are on our way.